if you can't scale dysfunction. I've tried. I've spent millions of dollars, lots of sleepless nights. You can't do it. Your business, your leadership is always the embodiment of your internal world. So who you are as a person, strengths and struggles, become what you express into the world. Presence and stillness, by definition, create revelation. You will never have revelation while simultaneously having anxious activity. It does not occur. Every cool idea you need, every innovation, every divine insight, everything comes in the moment of stillness. All right, so I've laid the groundwork there.
Hello, Liberty Spenders. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Stephen Scoggins to the show. Stephen is a nationally recognized life and business strategist. He's a host of the globally ranked podcast Build and the founder of Unstoppable Solutions. Stephen's story from overcoming homelessness to building and exiting companies with 9-figure results is amazing, and he now dedicates his work to helping leaders scale with clarity, integrity, and purpose. I love his practical approach. We talked about it a little bit when I was on his podcast a few weeks ago. It challenges hustle culture and empowers entrepreneurs to create real success without sacrificing their souls. So I'm pumped for this. It's going to be a great conversation. Stephen, thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
Are you kidding me? To hang out with you guys for a couple hours? This will be awesome.
Yes, we're pumped. You know, some of the most fun time I've had in the last few months was driving out to North Carolina, being on your show, having some dinner there. I knew Stephen was my kind of guy, Kristen, because it came time for dinner and he says, "How about Cheesecake Factory?" That's my kind of guy right there.
Are you yanking my chain or is that real?
No, it's real.
Oh, it's real. We had dinner at Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah. So for the just to expose Kurt a little bit, for the longest time, the running joke in our political circles, everybody would make fun of Kurt because he would say his favorite restaurant was Applebee's. That just shows how just Midwest, middle, he's like, what's wrong with that? And just the shade, the teasing that he took.
Applebee's was the heat in the 80s. I'm just saying.
For years and years and years. Anyway.
Well, I can't, I'm on the carnivore diet now.
Yeah.
I can't remember how many
Does that
pounds
mean you
I
actually have
lost.
to physically go and kill it and stuff? Or
I feel like I am.
Yeah, we'd lose a lot because we wouldn't eat. I mean, that would be.
Yeah, I feel like it. I've learned how to cook meat. In the last few weeks, couple months now, more than that, and so I can't do Applebee's anymore. No Applebee's, but I feel a lot better.
Well, there's that.
Yes, there's that.
But it puts everything into context. So it's like all you need to know about Kurt so that when you're out with him, just people are ordering these things and he's like, I don't know what this is. It's drizzled with something fancy. I don't know. Reduction. What is that? Yeah. And so we have a good time having a little fun.
I have some good Midwestern taste, meat and potatoes and cheese, right?
I feel you.
Yeah.
I feel you. I'm right there with you.
Lots of cheese.
Yeah. When we were together, you were getting ready to launch your 1 part lion, 1 part lamb framework and the lion's den. And so I've been pumped about it because I got a preview of what you're doing. And I wanted to start with that. So explain the idea, 1 part lion, 1 part lamb. I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. So I guess what's important to know first is I serve faith-led high-capacity leaders. Okay, a lot of the folks that we partner with, whether it's a more immersive environment or online or whatever, the one thing they all have in common is they're trying to build a kingdom within a kingdom for the kingdom of God, right? So they're anchored there. And what I've discovered is, and I discovered this by living it. So much of my story from the homeless journey to building that first company to upwards of 9 figures was a lot of overcoming me, right? Overcoming childhood issues, overcoming leadership issues, team building issues, rushing to market, rushing a process. And, statistically, they say on average, you typically have the same 4 or 5 things that kind of rotate each and every day. Well, every time they do the report. Lack of sales, lack of leadership, poor market fit, product positioning, right? So they kind of have these different things. And I got to thinking, in some of my meditation / prayer / journaling time, because I do a process that I told you about, what I hear you say is, and in that discovery process, one of the things I learned was that those are all symptoms. So not having enough cash flow in your business is a symptom. Not having the right team members is a symptom. Not being a great leader is a symptom. Not knowing that you're not a great leader is a symptom. Not being able to connect with the marketplace is a symptom. Not, doing a proper analysis of a competitive landscape or product fit. You're trying to create a product that nobody really wants, right? But you're all excited about it, right? All of those are symptoms. And when I began thinking about it, I began discovering really quick that there are really major constraints in building, scaling, not just yourself, but also an organization. And they actually are not the symptoms. There's a root cause, and the root cause is you, as it was with me. Mm-hmm. And when I began to really dig into it and then pour out over the last, call it decade of working with, 7, 8, 9-figure leaders, and different things like, in life mastery or life skill set, you'd be surprised some people are uber successful in business and they're wrecked with their life, and people are super successful with their life and wrecked in their business. And I've discovered that you can't really get that done until you become one part lion and one part lamb. And I'll break that down in a second. But before I do that, it's important to know the things that prevent you from becoming one part lion and one part lamb. And I discovered this by living it. I also discovered it by a simple study in 1 Samuel that can take you a long way. But in the grand scheme of things, there are 5 core constraints. Okay. These are the 5 root causes of the symptoms that I just mentioned and just rattled off. The first one is simple. It's called arrogance, right? And sometimes arrogance is nothing more than saying, I'll do it myself.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? The second one is ignorance. It's the inability to know what you need to know, or the resistance to knowing what you need to know. Okay. There's a big difference, which is in some cases another form of arrogance. And then there's impatience. So I stand up on stages on a regular basis, and I'm very, very fortunate to be in that position. God has blessed me abundantly, and he continues to give me more and more opportunities, which I'm grateful for. But one of my favorite questions standing in front of an audience is say, by a show of hands, how many of you think you should be further ahead than you actually are? Literally almost 100% of the time, if not 100% of the time. I can't think of one time except for the most recent conference, and I saw a lot of hands do this. Like the dance, it's like, okay, if there's a lot of you, they're scared. Okay, that's fear, right? But in the grand scheme of things, what I discovered is impatience doesn't allow you to be where your feet are. So therefore you're rushing the process because you don't feel like you're far enough ahead. So rather than focused on actually making sure the systems and the process, your leadership, our stuff are dialed in, you're like, no, shiny thing, next thing, next thing, next thing, shiny thing, right? So it creates a culture of striving, right? Hustle culture.
Yep.
Anxious activity, I call it. Well, once you understand that impatience is present, the other 2 constraints are fear and insecurity. All right. So if you just take those concepts and we'll table them to the side for just a second. When you take those core concepts, you can easily see how those can be the root causes of the vast majority of your business leadership challenges, family challenges, relationship challenges. And then I had a good friend of mine, Chris Rickstrew, just walk me through a process that he does in finding what he calls your warrior calling from God, right? The thing you were actually created by God to do. Really profound. And he sees some of these adversities as almost being thorns in the flesh, or almost like spiritual components of how that as kind of assigned to you as part of your life to kind of grow through, right? And then we went through this process, and when we came out the other side of it, it was like the number one problem that I've had to overcome and that I help other people overcome is chaos. So seeing chaos itself as a spiritual warfare piece, and once you can see it, you can't unsee it, which is really stinking cool. So one of the core attributes that I share before I really kind of break down one part lion and one part lamb is this concept of you can't scale dysfunction. I've tried. I've spent millions of dollars, lots of sleepless nights, relationship issues, you name it. You can't do it. Okay. And I also discovered that dysfunction and chaos by definition is always first started in the heart and the mind before it's ever become an expression in the public or expression in the business world. So inevitably what you're seeing is your business, your leadership, anything you're doing, you can see this in politics, you can see that in business, you can see it anywhere you want, is always the embodiment of your internal world. So who you are as a person, both strengths and struggles, become what you express into the world, how you operate with leadership. There's some concepts around, chaos is running rampant right now across the world. And I'm starting to see chaos with different eyes. I'm starting to see chaos and dysfunction as a principality. I was watching I like Sean Ryan, so I watched one of his episodes. He had a priest, probably the most respected priest as far as like casting out demons and all these kinds of things. Like what do you call it? The poltergeist, not poltergeist, but the
exorcism.
Exorcism.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because I remember I just got through saying that once you see it, you can't unsee it. What he does 9 times out of 10, while he's going through his journey, is he actually gets the entity to confess who it is by name. And we would think the names would come out of the Bible, like, or spiritual text, Azazel or
right,
Beelzebub. Or any of those names, right? You'd be surprised that most spiritual attacks actually have the names such as guilt, shame, condemnation, chaos, dysfunction. Like, you'd be surprised at just how often you see that. All right. So all of that being said, this issue has been around since the dawn of mankind. Okay. Now, where I see it the strongest is the dichotomy and the contrast. And I love contrast because contrast shows truth, but you don't know truth without knowing falsehood, and you don't know falsehood without knowing truth. So contrast gives you the bridge to understand the two. So I began really thinking about that. And about 2016, my grandfather, who was literally my spiritual mentor, literally called me his little soul winner from the time that I was born to he passed away in 2016. As I was 5 years as an atheist, like a very dedicated, because I had a pretty challenging childhood, but like a lot of folks have, more so than I think we'd like to admit, right? He comes to me one afternoon, or I actually go to him, and I'm telling him about wanting to one day exit my company and how I had an opportunity to potentially become a speaker when I was looking at the Ramsey organization for a little while and all these different types of things. And he's like, son, there's 2 things I want you to know. He said, first of all, there has been someone that has gone from construction to a worldwide ministry. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, there sure has. I'm like, who? His name is Yeshua. Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, he literally went from construction to a worldwide ministry and a worldwide impact. And he said the core thing is that if you're going to be successful, you have to become one part lion and one part lamb. What's crazy is I heard it, but I didn't understand it. And nor did I sit with it to understand it. So a few years later, I'm on a stage in 2017. And that thing came out of my soul. It's like, you have to become one part lion and one part lamb. It happened again in 2021. One part lion, one part lamb. And then I'm sitting with my book agent literally last year, the beginning of 2025. And, we've been talking about a new book release and kind of what I'm called to carry and all this kinds of stuff. And then she says, I don't feel comfortable with the title. Like, the content, it screams your heart, screams your mind. You obviously offer a lot of value to a lot of people. You help a lot of leaders. You're doing a lot of different things to help people secure their identity, secure their leadership, and ultimately secure their impact. She goes, but it doesn't fit. And I told her the story about my grandfather. And the moment I said one part lion, one part lamb, she's like, that's it. It's one part lion, one part lamb. And I was like, wow, okay, yeah, I could see that. She goes, well, what do you see it doing? I said, well, to become one part lion and one part lamb means you're becoming a truly integrated leader, first of all. Second of all, an integrated leader rises, leads, and lasts. It's one thing to rise and it's one thing to last, right? And you can see this very clearly with Saul and David, right? So Saul is obviously he's the first king of Israel. He unites all the clans, if you will, the tribes. He's anointed by Samuel. Samuel, ironically, even at the time that God asked Samuel to anoint him as king, he tells Samuel, I'm going to give Israel king, but I'm kind of telling you right now, it's not going to work out the way you think.
Right.
Meanwhile, then he anoints him, and Saul, in his humbleness, begins to thrive. Okay, he begins to unite the tribes. He goes to war. He's doing all the things. And as soon as he gets a taste of what I call greed and ambition, his entire countenance changes. He goes from being very deliberate and I'm going to listen to what Samuel says. I'm listening to what God says. I'm going to spend time with God, being present, all these kinds of things. He very quickly migrates to, I have stuff. I have fame. I have fortune. The people love me. And then he takes his entire kingship and puts it at the feet of the people. So he disobeys God to keep the admiration of the people. Right? So Saul obviously then goes, on a tirade until he falls on his own sword from the time that he learns he's going to lose his kingdom. Right? Which also tells you that even though we all have callings, I mean, we have all things, we also have the ability to resist it and push it away.
Yeah.
Okay. And what causes that? Arrogance, ignorance, impatience, fear, and insecurity. You can see it all the way through Saul. Okay. And you can see it all the way through most of us. Most of us have those illustrations at different times. All right. Let's contrast that just for a second with David. Okay. David was the least of these. In Psalms, it says, as I was born in my own iniquity. It's the only place in the Bible and scripture that you get an idea that David was not born even with conventional tradition. There's a good chance that his mother, while connected to Jesse, for example, may not have been the type of marriage that the tribe, because there was a downcasting of essentially their tribe of sorts, right?
Right.
Even though there's prophecies about the tribe of Judah and all that kind of stuff, even before that. Well, David's in the field. He's not doing anything, but he's so by himself, he has no choice but to be present with God. Shepherding sheep, fighting off lions and bears, and lions and bears, oh my, right? And what's really crazy,
got a lot of time on your hands.
I know,
he's got a lot of quiet.
Time on his hands. He's got his harp. I love the way the house of David portrays him as his mother teaching him how to sing and play the harp. I think that's a really beautiful, because there's something special about his mother, and there's also a lot of resistance with his father. He was largely outcast by his brothers. So basically you have the outcast, right? So here's a man who is largely considered an outcast by society, who later becomes a king, but he doesn't become a king the same way Saul became a king. Saul became a king ultimately seeking to be served. David became a king because he was built for service, right? So let's talk about David's attributes, all right? So if the 5 constraints are arrogance, ignorance, impatience, fear, and insecurity, then the contrast is actually what David embodied, which is arrogance. The opposite of arrogance is humility. The opposite of ignorance is teachability. The opposite of impatience is actually presence. It's not patience. I'll stop here for a second because I just did this little research. I had a good friend of mine, Doug Elks, who I believe stands a chance at walking directly in Billy Graham's footsteps. He is that kind of person, and he has that kind of authority when he's evangelizing. So he comes here to Safe Haven, the house that obviously you came to, Kurt. This was like a rest stop for leaders anyway. He had been on the road for a while, and I said, "Hey man, go out to the dock. I just really feel like strongly that God has something for you that he wants to share with you. You don't need to be in this room right now." So he takes me in my word, goes out to the dock. He's supposed to be there for 15 minutes, ends up being there for half an hour. Comes back changed. Not that anything was wrong, but like I hadn't listened to God in a really long time, because presence is powerful. Presence doesn't create power. Presence creates authority. The authority to take land or take a principality or whatever down, so to speak. What's really interesting about this process is in the Bible, it has a psalm that says, "Be still and know that I am God." Most of us have heard that psalm. Very few, if any of us, including myself until this encounter happened, have ever gone back to Hebrew or Paleo Hebrew. Everyone should go take their nearest chat buddy and go see what that really means. Be still and know that I'm God does not mean stopping what you're doing and sitting down and trying to listen. In its shortest format, it means to dwell within, to release control, to be completely surrendered, right? And if you go and just like do that exercise, you're going to see some of the most beautiful verbiage you'll ever see. Like there's so much depth in the Bible that we've been given for truth. It will absolutely blow your mind if you just pull back some onion layers. Like you really go on a search, right? Which is another form of being present. So anyway, you take David, and he's humble, he's teachable, he's present. The opposite of fear is trust. He's always trusting God, even when he's being persecuted, right? Saul was very insecure. David didn't find his security in any external matter whatsoever. You can see this the clearest when he's going after Goliath, right? So Goliath is this massive giant. In theory, David's still a boy, and he's running at Goliath. The Lord is going to deliver you my pan. So basically his security came from his identity that can only be found with the divinity that created it in the first place. So you have all these different aspects. So basically what you see in leadership today is you have a lion and a lamb contrast, okay? So all of us embody components of the lamb, the one part lion and the one part lamb. There's maturity and immaturity. In Saul's immaturity, he was controlling, dominant, egotistical, arrogant, insecure, like terrified of losing what God had given him. On the immature side of the lamb, he was also self-abandoning, over-functioning, and continued to like wanted to be worshiped by the people so much that he wanted to like really lean in. So you see immaturity. Meanwhile, you contrast that with David, and with David, you see the maturity of the lion and the lamb, right? The maturity of the lion, he's a protector. He's courageous. He's bold, right? He's willing to stand up for what's right based on God's terms, not based on human mankind or concept, right? So much of the divisive division and chaos and dysfunctional is an actual principality attack. I believe that with all my heart, which is why it's so hard to get people to have a simple conversation nowadays. Okay. But when you understand the contrast, David on the mature side of the lamb is empathetic. He's compassionate. He's loving. He's full of grace. He's full of mercy. And as a result, when he embodies those traits, David is developed as a king in a cave that was given a palace. You see what I'm saying? And, you know, and David, if we're being honest, David fell the moment he stopped looking at how am I showing up in maturity. Like the moment he wanted to be approved by people himself, he fell into the trap, right? Mm-hmm. The moment he had to go out of his way to try to trap Uriah, to have Uriah killed to cover up a pregnancy. Yeah. Like, it's important to understand that as amazing as David was known to be historically, right? A man after God's own heart. If you don't actually protect your heart and have your heart consistently aligned with what God has got for you, you're going to get derailed. So whether I'm saying this mentality in a faith-based area or a secular area, it doesn't make it any less true. The reality is if you want to know truth, you can't live a lie.
Right.
So that's my dissertation, if you will, on the summary of one part lion, one part lamb.
If you're listening to this show, it's probably because you understand something most people don't. Marketing to Liberty Spenders isn't just about ads or tactics, it's about trust. And in the real world, trust moves through relationships. And that's why private introductions and deal flow are such a core part of what we do.
So FastPass is a private introduction and deal flow network for Christian and conservative leaders who already have influence and want to scale fast. It's not open networking, it's intentional introductions between people who already share alignment. We've seen one client land a $25,000 opportunity from a single introduction. Another told us that FastPass has become his largest source of referrals, not because of volume, but because of fit. And yet another closed her equity round at a key moment just due to the right introduction.
When you book a one-to-one consult with us, we're not handing you a list or making big promises. Instead, we're having a real conversation about what you're building, who you want to meet, and whether FastPass makes sense for this season for you. So no pressure, no hustle, and no awkward pitch from us.
Yeah. If you're ready to grow through relationships instead of forcing everything on your own, head to libertyspenders.com/FastPass and book a one-to-one consult with us.
In worst case, you leave with clarity. Best case, the right introductions change the trajectory of what you're building.
Okay, back to the episode.
I like the distinctions that you're bringing to that. Mm-hmm. And then I think this is then sort of in conjunction with, and maybe you touched on it, your integrated leadership alignment method. Mm-hmm. So how does that integrate with this concept of one part lion, one part lamb?
Yeah, so first of all, you have to understand what traditional leadership looks like. So traditional leadership, first of all, it looks like top-down leadership. Listen to me because I'm your boss. Listen to me because I own the company. Listen to me because I'm your spouse. Listen to me because I'm your father. Listen to me because I'm your mother, right? Real leadership is not fostered by fear, control, or domination. Real leadership is inspired, empowered, and always growing. It's influential, okay? And real leaders always create future leaders, okay? Poor leaders always suppress leaders. Again, you can go back to Saul and David, right? David should have been risen based on God's word in front of Saul, and Saul tried to suppress David, right? Saul's reign may have even lasted longer had he not resisted so much, because it wasn't like David was given the kingdom like yesterday.
Right.
Like he still went through his own preparation phase. So once we understand that, we have to understand what creates dysfunction within a leader, which is really goes back to the constraints, right? You have emotional behaviors you have emotional challenges that are causing unsuccessful behaviors, giving you unsuccessful results. There are, in our world, in leadership, could be politics, business, whatever, there are people that could be amazing leaders. God has anointed them so strongly to be so good, and they could be even more authoritative and have more power if they could learn to merge the immature lion into a mature lion, the immature lamb into a mature lamb, right? Bold, courageous, protective, empathetic, compassionate, learning, easy listening, connected, etc. Okay. So what is the process of integration? Well, the process of integration really starts with a few different things. It's really 4 steps. The first part is align. You have to align to your real, authentic identity. And I'm going to tell you how to find it in a second. Okay. Then you have to integrate what you learned. The process of integration is nothing more than taking what you've learned, taking your authentic self, pulling them together, and then beginning to integrate them in thoughts, actions, and emotional responses. Okay. It's awareness. It's becoming, okay. It's like awareness meets practice, which takes you to the third step, which is called embodiment. Embodiment is where you literally carry yourself that way each and every day. And when you fall, you get back up and you do it again. And guys, I'm telling you this from a place, I was a very bad leader for over a decade. I was a Saul. And God told me literally in some prayer time, he's like, I called you to be a David, not to lead like a Saul. You need to learn about David. Good, bad, and the ugly, right? That embodiment process, it literally scientifically actually integrates within your nervous system. So the thing that you've learned now becomes the thing that you become, right? Which gives you into the expansion process. Part of the reason that business and leaders don't expand quick enough is because they don't do the other 3 steps. Mm-hmm. They just want expansion. Mm-hmm. They want expansion of their kingdom, their business, their relationships. They want expansion, but they don't want to do the work that creates expansion. You take an apple, the apple has a seed in it. That seed is now an apple tree, right? God doesn't, even when God gives us a vision or whatever, even David, you can look at any biblical figure you want. God always gives the provision, but the provision is never the provision at complete fruition. Mm-hmm. It's always in seed form. Because it's what creates character and capacity to hold it in the first place. So as you're understanding this concept, the integrated leader is a leader who wakes up each and every day, who decides each and every day that they want to become 1 part lion and 1 part lamb in its most mature form. Mm-hmm. And over time, it becomes so embodied that when you walk into a room, people don't see you as domineering, powerful, controlling. You walk into the room, you don't have to say a word. You don't have to flex. You don't have to brag. You don't have to do any of the things that we do as humans to prove our worth to other people, because your worth is so deeply rooted, just as an apple tree would be rooted in the soil, that it can only produce good fruit. And everybody can see good fruit on a good apple tree, even far away. Yeah. Right. So that's the kind of the general concept of the integrated leader. The integrated leader is a leader who can both carry strength and surrender simultaneously. Those leaders don't just build businesses. They build legacies, real legacies. They lead leaders. Those leaders become great leaders and lead leaders. And where humanity's gotten it all wrong is the kingdom and culture are completely inverse. So culture says, go out and get and gain. Kingdom says, go out and serve and create value. Mm-hmm. Both contrast give exponential increase. The one thing that happens with the exponential increase is in the grinding phase, and over here in this hustle culture of getting more, gaining more, proving my worth, what you're actually creating is greed. Like that's a poison. That's not helpful, because you'll never have enough. And I learned this lesson when I was on my house in Utah, and I had exited, had everything you think you'd want. And I was like, I'm more miserable than I was homeless. This is ridiculous. And that's what God took me on the journey to understand what the integrated leader is. Yeah. And that's why we teach a 2-day seminar. Not only the greed and the hustle culture, but it can make you forget your identity. Right. And now you've got, now you've got idols going on that you didn't know were there. I'm listening very intently to everything you're saying, and it's really fascinating how you're breaking this down. It's just so much value here. I'm going to have to
listened to it back multiple times. And Kurt is always so good. He takes notes in real time. Whenever he like, that's a good sign. He's like writing furiously. But I think, to your point, it's just, I loved what you said about the presence too, because I just think that is so key to staying connected. And when we are busy, even when, again, we feel like we're in our calling, or, we feel like we're doing his will. If you're not staying connected and you're not having those touch points, it's amazing how quickly you can get off, wildly off.
Yeah.
And you can mistake all this effort that you're doing for him. Are you? Right?
I had to go through
Are
that.
you sure? Are you doing this for you because you don't feel good about yourself if you're not right? You get it, like the producing, but the identity thing is so huge because especially for a lot of entrepreneurs, well, who am I if I'm not this successful, right? If I'm not operating at the level that I define myself as, right? As opposed to who am I in Christ and my identity is firm.
Yeah, but then you're chasing less than your entire life. It's what causes the striving. Here's the thing. I realized a long time ago that there's no amount of external success that I can take with me to heaven. What I can take with me to heaven is the man that I become. Like, I can ride that wave. I can become that guy. I can choose each and every day to be better, sharper, more stable, all those types of things. I mean, the whole reason that, we started doing a founder accelerator, and this is something new for Kurt, but we started giving the Lion's Den as a part of the support system, because I find that leaders get really excited about wanting to become their wholest self. Okay. There's not many people that I can see in the world that can actually execute on teaching someone, how do I really become my wholest self? Okay. So I'm going to give you a simple framework for this. Again, a lot of this. So let me go back a little bit. I do a journaling process every day. And it came at September 21st, 2024. I had already exited. I had already had everything on paper that you think that you would want. And I went through a radical life shift due to a relationship. Okay. Relationship ended unexpectedly. Wasn't expecting it. Hit me hard. And then I realized I've been playing the same pattern for over 40 plus years. At the time I was 47, 48 years old, 50 now. So it's a relatively new change. And I was so distraught that I literally pulled out a computer and I typed as hard and fast as I could, tears in my eyes. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why this keeps happening. There's got to be something I don't see. What's the pattern, kind of thing. I get to the end of the typing session. I changed the font color to blue. I said, God, if there's anything you can share with me, please share it now. I promise you, hand to God, I could not type fast enough. I was typing so fast that I couldn't even read it while I was typing. I was crying so hard and I couldn't even and ultimately I went back and read it, and it's very clearly not my voice, and it's very clearly very authoritative. But the crazy part is even in that contrast was one part lion and one part lamb. I was literally both kicked in the pants while simultaneously receiving a hug. Right? And as parents, we can use that as a principle to even steward our kids. And we should be stewarding everything. Like we're not even given the ability to create for the sake of obtaining. We're given the ability to create because creation creates overflow. Overflow helps others. That's why no human has all the things, right? But that started a 6-month every morning process called What I Hear You Say Is. I would first thing in the morning, I'd wake up, be like 5:30. I wouldn't do anything. I might have a sip of caffeine, but I'd go sit, turn the lights, house is quiet, nothing going on. And I would go sit and I would just write at the top of the page, what I hear you say is today's date, and I would listen. Okay. So I've set the stage. That's something I encourage everyone to do. If you're concerned about what you're hearing, meaning your current level of faith, well, maybe I'm not listening to the right voice. God will not contradict himself. So if anything comes out that's contradicting God, that's coming from you. It's not coming from him. Okay. However, if you go and sit with the intention of being present, just as David did, just as Jesus did, just as Samuel did, just as Abraham did, just as Moses did, things shift fast. All of them had one thing in common. They all sat in front of God's presence, searching for God. That intention of just sitting there, I want to hear. Because inside of that blue document that I had the first time, it said, I'm always talking, but they're seldom listening. And we're not listening because we're caught up in hustle culture and anxious activity, thinking the anxious activity is going to bring us everything that we want. Here's the cool thing. Presence and stillness, by definition, create revelation. You will never have revelation while simultaneously have an anxious activity. It does not occur. Every cool idea you need, every innovation, every divine insight, everything comes in the moment of stillness. All right, so I've laid the groundwork there, okay? In one of these journaling sessions, God gave me a very simple formula. So I'm going to lay it out here. Listening, okay, precedes being. Being should always precede doing. And doing always precedes becoming. So you must listen to be to do, and do to become. That is the path of the integrated leader or the integrated entrepreneur, whatever word you want to use. The integrated leader listens first, becomes, or is being the embodiment of what we're aspiring to do before they ever take action. We skip the first two steps constantly. And so we do, and then we wonder how come we're not becoming. And we're not becoming because there's no truth in our becoming. You only get truth in your becoming by being present and still.
We like the shortcut.
Hey, I'm trying to help as many people as I can because
or what we perceive.
Took me 48 years. Okay,
what we perceive is the shortcut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, look, integrated leaders become more prosperous, faster, and they have peace and fulfillment. The world, the worldly system, the culture system has sold you a lie that you must strive to have, and then have peace. You don't have to strive to have. You have to be still first, become, and then transcend. And you can find this in the Bible. So if some of you guys are like, well, he's using new agey words. I'm like, I'm not using new agey words. I love my Bible. I love my Jesus. Jesus said manifest himself, right? Multiple times. So just putting it out there. Anyway.
Yeah.
Hot take.
Yeah. That picture of you got to strive to have and then have peace, right? That seems integrated everywhere. Even in some common self-help people that I like, it's all about, you got to work hard, get your dreams, and then, just imagine what life will be like.
That's right? Chaos culture.
And it's very, it's easy to get caught up in that because there's some, it seems wise, right?
Yeah. Noah still had to build the boat. You still have to make an effort. What I'm saying is just turn it on its head, start with presence, and then let presence take over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because if not, what'll happen is you'll wake up each and every morning, and people will probably watching or listening right now, and they'll say, well, yeah, I wake up every morning a little overwhelmed, a little burned out, a little stressful, a little anxious, a little unworthy, a little insecure. And the only reason they feel any of those things is because they're starting their day with those feelings. So those feelings carry out through the day, carry out through the night, and repeat. All you have to do to break the cycle is to wake up, go be still, go sit still, dwell within, grab a journal, and let God talk to you, period.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else will happen. It'll just begin to happen. Just be consistent with it. And it'll be weird at first. Takes 2 or 3 times for it to really sit into it, but it's worth it.
You sort of answered the question just now, but what I wanted to ask about was, there are people listening to this right now and they're hearing what you're saying. They're thinking, okay, this makes sense. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to recognize this dysfunction in yourself, right? One of the things the Bible says about sin is it blinds us, right? So we legitimately, we're not seeing it, right? We're not, we're lying to ourselves, and so if you could talk to a leader now, is there a red flag? Is there something, hey, if this is what you're experiencing all the time, you need to wake up and pay attention to these kinds of symptoms. What would you say to that?
A couple different things. I think the one that sticks out, the layer that comes up first, is going to be your life is a mirror. Okay, so whatever dysfunction you're currently carrying, you're probably seeing it inside of other people, which is why you recognize it. The trick is learning to look at that same mirror and look at yourself with it. Okay, so you might walk around and see other people as arrogant. Okay, the fact that you recognize arrogance also says there's probably arrogance within your heart. So the way that you become aware of it is simply looking at your world, because your world is always going to be a mirror. Just like your business, your leadership, all of that stuff is a mirror. So if you have negative business outcomes constantly happening, okay, that's a leadership issue. For example, let's say you've got gossip running rampant in your company, and gossip just makes you, okay, I want you to stop, and I want you to honestly ask yourself, do you ever share information yourself with someone on your team that it shouldn't be shared with? Even if you call it under the guise of venting, I'm just venting. We can call it whatever we want, but when we're talking about things that to someone that can do nothing about it, that's gossip. Okay. And what I've seen in the cultures of gossip, I mean, I've done this myself, is I would vent to a senior team leader that wasn't even on the executive team, just because I was frustrated and I felt like I could confide in them, thinking they were a safe place, not realizing that I was abandoning my leadership post by doing that. Mm-hmm. Then I would have the leader that would obviously it always hears about it, right? That leader hears about it, and then they feel betrayed. Ergo, scaling dysfunction. And then you have to unravel it, to rebuild trust, all the things. So there's lots of different ways in which it shows up. One of the ways it showed up for me, well, I'll say as a family thing, 22 years old, my oldest son was 22 years old. We had an unfortunate divorce. He's not biologically mine, but I raised them, so they're my boys. And he pulls me to the side, and he's at Campbell University shortly after the announcement was made. And I'm thinking I'm going to go and console him. He wants to have dinner. I was like, oh, you got it. I'm right there. I'll be there soon, right? We have dinner. He looks at me in my eyes. He says, as far as I'm concerned, you were a great husband, a great father. But if there's one thing you can do better and do different, now keep in mind, this is the son that doesn't like to rock the boat. Imagine the courage this kid has to have in this moment. And he says, you have to become more present when you're present. You see, some dysfunction doesn't show itself in business. Some dysfunction shows itself first in the home. It's the moment when you're trying to finish an email and whatever, and on your phone or whatever, and your child comes to you and they're like, hey, look at this thing I just drew, or can we go do this, or whatever. It's that little tug. And you very quickly, without even thinking about it, you go, just let me finish this one thing. Let me finish this one thing, right? And you're trying to go back to what you were doing. What you just said is that whatever you were doing is more important than the very most important thing God asked you to steward. And I can say it because I've done it. Pretty much everything I've shared today is I learned it because I've done it. I learned it the hard way. I learned that I needed to represent and change. You see, an integrated leader is a leader who wants to become one part lion and one part lamb. They want to become the embodiment of the biblical heroes on their best day. And the greatest biblical hero that we'll ever have is Jesus. Jesus constantly was one part lion and one part lamb. Constantly. You see it super clearly with a woman caught in the act of adultery. These Sadducees and Pharisees went out of the way to go find a woman caught. How do you catch a woman in the act of adultery without searching for her?
Right.
It's not like they're doing it in the streets, right? So where's the greater deception? Meanwhile, they bring this woman, throw her down in front of Jesus. Jesus clearly doodles on the ground. To this day, we don't know what he was doodling. He could have been drawing stick figures. We don't know, right? I have a feeling he was like literally writing. So he's like, all right, I see you, James. Okay, buddy. Let's see. I'm gonna see if James admits his. All right, I'm gonna see if John admits his. I'm gonna see if Joseph. Okay, look at this. Okay. Hey, guy, he is without sin. Cast the first stone. He wasn't overly aggressive, but he was bold and he was courageous. He could have rained down fire and brimstone, had angels and all kinds of stuff. And like, here's a God that has complete authority over all things and still chooses in humility to give them a chance. Right. So then in the same instant moment, they drop the stones. He was the lion in that moment. He literally looks over this woman, kneels down to where she is. Some translations call her woman. Some translations call her daughter. I like the one that calls her daughter because to me that shows compassion. And Jesus looks in her eyes and says, daughter, where are your accusers? Right? He had every right by Torah law and everything to obliterate her, just like he had every right to obliterate the people that tried to accuse her to begin with. But in his utter lambness, his compassion, his empathy, like he gives this woman a chance at redemption. All of us want the chance at redemption. All of us don't want to think that our worst days are going to be held over our heads or become labels the rest of our lives. Like, none of us want that. Few of us admit it. And sometimes admitting where you're at is the precursor to who you can become. You know, so a leader is going to see things like disconnected families, disconnected businesses, stalled build outs. In other words, they're making revenue, they're making more revenue, but there seems to be more pressure. Like, the revenue is not fixing it. The leadership itself has to change. When the leader changes, when the leader truly embodies the lion and the lamb simultaneously, both strength and surrender simultaneously, the entire organization changes. The family tree changes. You see, when the devil goes after your business or he goes after your marriage, he's not going after your business and your marriage. He's not after you. Get out of your arrogance. He's not after you. He's after the generations hidden inside of you. If he can get you off track, then he can get every little generational. Look at all the generational trauma that's out there. That generational trauma, it kept happening because we abandoned our kingdom. We abandoned our post. We abandoned our own leadership. So I would invite every single leader in politics, in business, in the home, like, no matter where you are, I'm inviting you right now to be called higher, because God is calling everyone higher. He's going to hold all of us leaders that should have been leading well accountable for not leading well. He's going to, because we have influence.
Yes.
And that influence is what's supposed to set the tone for the kingdom.
Yeah, I do think we will be held accountable. I mean, we know that for how we live our life, but I also think when you're in business, marketplace ministry, I also think we'll be held accountable for were we faithful and living boldly to multiply what God has given us too.
Yep.
So I love how your approach can facilitate that. You know, something really we're very passionate about here is just growth for greater kingdom impact. Yes, absolutely be living out your faith with what you do and how you lead your team and how you run your business. But also, as believers, we're called to multiply. And so let's get into that and what we need to do, because I think we'll be held accountable to both things.
And the spirit of chaos is what's preventing the multiplication.
I completely agree. And it's interesting.
This is why the leaders got to step into it.
When you're talking about the generational thing, I'm a big fan of Jackie Hill Perry, and she said something that I really thought was interesting. It was a different take, but she was saying, we feel like we're under attack, right? Or our marriage is under attack, or Satan wants to do this. And the point she made, which I thought was interesting, was I don't really think the devil's after that. I think he's just trying to get us all in unbelief, because we'll just, if that's all we do, right, we'll wreck all this stuff ourselves. I forget that the end of it, but it really hit me because I thought you're right. Because when we're in unbelief, then what do we fall back to, right? Hustle culture, fear, shame, guilt, like everything, right? Everything is out of alignment. We're not listening to God. We're not hearing. So everything gets out of whack. So I think that's
what's the first moment of dysfunction in the Bible?
Well, I mean, you have Adam and Eve,
right? Yeah.
Right. All right. So
here's listening to.
Yeah. So here's another tidbit that God showed me.
Letting that whisper.
All dysfunction starts with doubt. All of it. When you can learn to trust over doubt, chaos will cease to have a hold.
Yep.
So this multiplication that we're responsible for, that we'll be held accountable for, I'm with you, I believe that'll be the case, is really going to come down to will the leader be called up? Meaning not will they be called, but will they step up? Think about your favorite leader on the planet. I have really strong conservative values in general. But when I look at the landscape, I see brokenness, dysfunction, chaos, all this kind of stuff. What if the most bold, courageous leader who's acting bold, courageous could simultaneously act with compassion and empathy?
Yep.
What if it wasn't either or? What if it was a yes and? And that's what I want to encourage leaders to do, because my journey is a living testimony or proof that when you can operate in both strength and surrender simultaneously, you carry authority. I don't have to walk into a room and talk about any achievement of any kind, because honestly, the achievements are completely irrelevant. I don't want to be known for my achievements. I want to be known for my heart. But when I walk into a room, oftentimes people say there's a presence. It's not my presence. Like I'm walking in the authority bubble, if you will, of the authority that was given to me and put on me. And the only reason I'm able to walk into it is because I choose to. The moment I choose not to walk in, not to listen to where the authority comes from and walk in that authority from where it comes from, the source of the authority is the moment, the next thing you know, I'm trying to get Uriah killed, right? That's how close and important choices are for leaders. So, when we do a 90-minute, or it ends up being closer to 120-minute free training each and every month called the 5 Critical Shifts, where I break down the constraints in detail and how they're impeding progress. And then we started doing a 2-day event that we just did, literally our first one this past weekend. And that was like, you should have seen that the leaders coming in and how they walked out in 2 days was insane. Like insane in the most beautiful possible way. Like I'm already getting like text messages and here's the thing is this, it's not about me. It's actually about them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
God forced me to live it. Part of my difficult upbringing and childhood and choices and all the things that I've been through was designed to simply show me the principality of chaos. That's what it was designed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gave me a choice. What do you want to do about it? I'm like, I'm be it unto me according to thy will.
Yeah.
Triple ones, y'all. 11 here.
You've alluded to a couple of things. How did you get here? I think you alluded to being homeless at one point. Tell me a little bit about this.
Oh gosh. Here's the crazy part about my life story. It's a lot like Forrest Gump or Joseph from the Bible. That's a lot.
There we go. We got the Cliff Notes.
There you go. So all the twists and turns and all the things there. My earliest days are my parents divorcing very early. I was probably 6 years old or something like that. Little brother, 3-year-old brother. Subconsciously, I think I even then thought maybe I was the cause. So I began the worth chasing. They kind of went off to fight their own battles. My dad struggled with alcohol for a number of years. He's just celebrated 39 years sober. So
Amazing.
that's and he's a great grandfather to his grandkids and all the things. Both my parents have come a long, long way. My mother at the time was struggling with a lot of mental illness. And when you understand her backstory, you'd understand why it was such a hard fought battle. But 9 years old, my grandmother begins to take care of me. Well, probably earlier than that, but at 9 years old, she came to me. I had a G.I. Joe in one hand, transforming the other. Snake Eyes was about to battle Bumblebee. And she pulled me to the side with a lot of tears in her eyes and was just like basically reluctantly asking me to become a helper of the house. Mm-hmm. So about that time, I stopped being a child. I was taught how to cook and clean, mainly with things that you can make out of water and oat milk, like, water, milk. Get my brother up for school, get myself up to school, help get him dressed, help me get me dressed. And if you think about the mental acuity of an 8 or 9 year old, that's not prevalent, right?
Right.
And I also think I learned recently that I always felt, because she passed away when I was 11. And when she passed away, I realized my entire life I've been trying to overfunction and save just to prevent my grandmother from dying. You'd be surprised at what the human psyche does and how the devil monkeys with your human psyche to get kind of a foothold. But yeah, so that began the childhood transition. That was about a decade long before I was homeless. At 11 years old, I went to construction sites, met my first mentor of all time, my dad's employer. His name was Steve, so I kind of had that going on. So I was like, hey, I'm Steve and you're Steve. That was kind of a cool moment. But he mentored me. He got me all kinds of like quotes and would pull me down off the job and ride me around. And later found out my grandfather used to work for him. I'm sorry, my grandfather was working for him, but he used to work for my grandfather. And my grandfather survived Pearl Harbor and subsequently got into alcoholism himself, which then became a bit of a generational thing. Good man, great man, not mean-spirited or nothing like that, but still struggled with alcohol. And so Steve would talk to me about that. And one of my most pivotal moments with Steve, is Steve comes to me and pulls me off a framing crew. He said, "Hey guys, I have two really important questions for you." I'm like, "Okay." He said, "Well, the first one is what is the difference between a rich man and a poor man?" And I was like, "Well, duh, it's money. Of course, rich man got money, poor man got no money." Like, I don't know, I was a teenager. Yeah, I mean, I was a teenager, and my family at that time was constantly borrowing money, borrowing but never repaying. Right, so you just borrow. I'm going to borrow this. I'll get you next Friday. Next Friday we come and go, etc. So this had been dynamic, been going on. So I think he was trying to get my attention, but he said, "Absolutely not. It's the way they think." The next question is the one that really got me. He said, "Do you want to learn to think like me, or do you want to continue thinking like your father?" Now, Steve Myrick was a very wealthy man. Call it self-built his fortune or whatever. But he was also a very generous man. Like I could see now, hindsight, looking at him in the lion-lamb framework, and I see a mostly mature lion and a mostly mature lamb with elements of the other. And it wasn't one of my favorite memories. Is he was at a barbecue joint, and my dad used to follow him around like a little puppy dog. Right. So we would go to the same restaurants he would go to, just be within an earshot. And my dad at the time, again, my dad's changed, but he used to do the money dance. So he would kind of start bouncing a little bit up and down. And that means he was about to ask for money. So I called it the money dance. And 9 times out of 10, Steve would create a way for it to happen. He loved my dad like a son. But anyway, this particular evening, we followed him up to the restaurant. We're sitting a couple tables over, but they were finishing up. And I watched Steve pull $1,000 cash out of his wallet, put it in a basket of hush puppies, right? And literally just walk out the door. And meanwhile, a few moments later, this waitress comes out from behind the back that had been waiting on them, and she's like cleaning up the table. You could tell at first she feels like that she's like been stiffed because the money's kind of hidden. But as she's cleaning the table up, she literally collapses to the floor. And was praising God and, oh my God. And she was like, I could do this and I could do she was a single mom. She had a couple of kids, clearly strapped for cash, truly trying to make ends meet, all the things. And I always knew that I wanted to be that. Yeah. I wanted to have that level of affluence, that if I felt like God told me to, that I could somehow be a blessing to people who are searching for a blessing. A lot of us wait for God to rain down whatever our prayer request is, just rain it down. And again, he never does it that way. He always does it in the way you least expect, 100% of the time. But Steve Meyer put me in business for myself. I made a bunch of money really, really fast with him, and got involved in a toxic relationship of sorts, which was my Achilles heel for decades of my life, and ultimately walked off his job site and essentially quit. Even though I was making well over 6 figures as a 19-year-old kid, and proceeded to go through a humbling that I needed. And you fast forward just about a year and a half earlier, he gives me a second chance I didn't deserve to start the company that I sold out of the trash piles of construction site. He's like, I'll give you a second chance, but that's all you're getting. You got to figure it out. And I did. I spent my entire paycheck renting a piece of equipment. And then my father and I built the assets that I would need to start the company from the trash piles of a construction site. And did the first 4 or 5 homes by myself, and then built it brick by brick, stone by stone. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest blessings I ever had was the fact that my credit was so wrecked that I couldn't borrow money.
Yeah.
I built
just
all
took
of my
that
business
option.
on cash. And you decrease risk. It decreases stupidity, arrogance. That was just one of the biggest blessings. But that's probably the short version of a very, very long story.
Well, I know there's more, and that's why I was looking at the time and I thought, man, we have to have part 1, part 2 of this, because we can't leave this out. But I think what's great about this is a couple things. Is one, I always love to highlight these key takeaways for people, is mentorship and the impact that person had on you, and over and over. And I love to highlight that stuff because I always want to be encouraging anybody listening to this. That can be you. Right? Like you can be that for someone, and looking for those opportunities, and the power of that relationship and what him believing in you and giving you that second chance did for you, and what you've been able to do since. I mean, just think about the ripple effects now of how you've been able to pour into all these other people. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
A blessing. Yeah, it's a blessing for sure.
And we don't recognize what God can do with that when we're being obedient. And like you said, being compassionate. And so I just love that. But I know we probably need to now get into our lightning round.
Let's go.
3 questions, 90 seconds each. The first one is, what legacy do you hope to leave behind from your work at Unstoppable Solutions or the Lion's Den?
In its simplest format, I want to be Steve Meyer to as many people as humanly possible. In its simplest format. Steve, I learned one thing is, I get to talk about Steve nowadays, but no one knew who he was before I started speaking, teaching, whatever. And I love sharing the story because it's a living illustration that the greatest legacy you'll ever leave is one that outlives you, and 2, one that you leave inside of somebody else. So that's probably those 2 things right there embody becoming Steve Meyer to as many people as humanly possible.
Love it.
I like it. Nice. I think now this is completely different. 90 seconds on any topic that's been interesting you lately. It just needs to be off topic. Maybe it's a hobby, good book, sports team you're a big fan of. What's something that's got you going down the rabbit hole lately?
Hebrew.
Yeah.
Hebrew. Yeah. I'm a big fan of going back and looking at scripture in light of how it was originally written. Because the Hebrew words are like Chinese characters. They have numeric value. They have a phonic value. They have a meaning value. And then they bunch them together and they have a combined number meaning phonic value. It's the wildest thing. And, it's funny. I want everybody listening to go, because I know I got like 10 seconds left. Go look up the word Bereshit, which is the first words in the Torah, which is AKA the first words in the Bible, but look at it through the lens of what's called Paleo Hebrew. You will literally see a cross with a pierced hand. And God says that inside of Isaiah, it's either 45 or 46. He says, I am God. There is none like me, for I can declare the end from the beginning. Right. The very first words. That's a fun one. So I love Paleo Hebrew.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
That is awesome. Okay. Last one is easy, but I want you to pretend like people haven't heard anything you've been talking about. And they just fast forward to this moment. 90 seconds on who is Stephen Scoggins, who should find you, and how do you help them? Where do they find you?
Well, the easiest way to find us is actually engage with us. Go to StephenScoggins.com with a PH. So StephenScoggins.com/leader. And it can walk you through a quick survey yourself. We don't sell you anything, to figure out where you are in the lion lamb category. So do that for sure. As far as who is Stephen, Stephen is a servant of the Most High and a steward of the Most High, plain and simple. I have a mantra that I do. I'm healthy, I'm wealthy, I'm wise, I'm a steward of the Most High, and I love you, Stephen. I do it 4 times every day. And that is one of the other things that have rebuilt me from the inside out. So what I do is I help high capacity leaders live in alignment. So they can be true to themselves and still make an impact, make money, legacy, all the things that the world tells you have to get through striving. I can show you how to get through presence.
I love it, guys.
I do too. This has been great. Absolutely wonderful having you join. And I'm going to say it again. You want to go to www.stephenscoggins.com/leader to learn more about what he's up to.
Yep. And I don't know when we'll get this out, but I am excited because we're going to see you at the U.S. Christian Chamber of Commerce conference. And I know you're speaking on a panel there. And so I signed up to make sure I'm in that lab, buddy. So
let's go.
Excited to hear some more, and you dropping fire on us today. And like I said, I think this is going to be something that you could go back and listen and re-listen. So thank you for being so patient with us and really breaking that stuff down for us. And folks, encourage you to check out everything Stephen is doing and his podcast Build. Thank you so much for joining us, Stephen. And for those of you listening, we know how valuable your time is. Thanks for spending some of it with us. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything in the future. Until next time.